Okay, welcome back to part 2 of Get Piano Lesson 7. In the first half of this video lesson, I spent a lot of time demonstrating to you some of the key points of playing the piano with both hands. We saw that even a piano piece that's a bit more advanced can still be slowed down and analyzed beat by beat in order to see what each hand is playing at any given moment. But now we're going to begin to slowly practice some of the two-handed playing styles I discussed earlier by using our specialized numbering system to guide us along. And by this time, I'm sure you're quite familiar with the numbers we've assigned to our fingers. During our first 6 piano lessons, we've been practicing a variety of key exercises that should have pretty much drilled these numbers into your head by now. And for good reason. You're really going to need to know this information in order to proceed with this lesson and every lesson we do from now on. So, in accordance with what we've learned so far, when we see a group of numbers on our screen written for our right hand, we're going to find our middle C hand position on our keyboard, which we also know as our first position, and play these notes starting from there. And then when we see a group of numbers written for our left hand, we're going to find our other C hand position, located just below middle C, and play these notes from there. But now, what happens when we see both lines of numbers written on the screen at the same time? Well, when we see both lines shown like this, it's calling for both our hands to take their respective positions on the keyboard and play both sets of numbers simultaneously. But exactly how do we read both of these lines at the same time? I mean, we know it's pretty easy to keep our eye on one line of numbers at a time and then play them individually, but what exactly do we look at first if we need to play them together? Well, the basic rule of sight reading with both hands on the piano is that you read your notes from top to bottom and then from left to right. Now that's true for even a very primitive exercise like this, or whether you're actually reading music notes from a staff in sheet music. What that means is that the first thing your eye catches are the notes written for the right hand. And then not even a millisecond later, your eyes see what's going on in the left hand. So, when we read an exercise like this, the first thing our eyes see is that number 1 in the right hand. And then not even a split second goes by when we see that number 5 in the left hand. Now, although we've seen them at different times, they're meant to be played together, and that's what we do. And then the next thing our eyes catch is that number 2 in the right hand and the number 4 in the left hand. But we also play these notes at the same time as well. And then, moving from right to left again, and then from top to bottom, our eyes naturally gravitate to the number 3 in the right hand and the number 3 in the left hand. Next, we see the number 4 in the right hand and the number 2 in the left hand. And finally, we see the number 5 in the right hand and next the number 1 in the left hand. So although our eyes are reading the right and left hand notes at different times, that doesn't affect our timing as we play this exercise all the way through. So now that we have a basic understanding of how we read notes written for both hands at the same time, let's start out with something simple. Here you'll see we have 2 lines of numbers written again for both hands. The line preceded with an RH is obviously the right hand part, and the LH is the left hand part. Notice how I've split up the right hand numbers into groups of 2, and the left hand is written to play only 1 note for each group of 2 right hand notes. I've arranged it in this way so that we can really emphasize most of our attention on the lead right hand while our left hand acts as the supporting hand. Also know that what you see on the screen is only half the exercise. When we play through to the end of these notes, we're going to continue on and finish up with this passage of notes. Alright? So with that said, let's start out at the beginning and see how we're going to wrap both our hands around this first double-handed piano exercise. Now, as I said a little earlier, when you're playing piano with both hands, you really want to separate the different parts of each hand and learn them first. And then later you want to gradually work both hands into the song by synchronizing them to the beat. So it's very important to keep track of the beat to gauge how each hand should be relating to one another in real time. And in this particular exercise, our beat is in the count of 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. So let's start out with the right hand part of this exercise first, which is the normal thing to do as you begin playing most piano pieces with both hands. Each of the right hand notes will be played for a count of 1 beat, and that's actually why I've separated them into groups of 2. For each beat we count, the right hand will play 1 note. So let's get started with our right hand in the middle C hand position and begin playing these notes along with the beat. And 3, 5, 4, 2, 2, 4, 3, 1, 1, 3, 2, 5, 4, 2, 1. Now don't be alarmed if this melody sounds a little familiar. We've actually played this finger pattern before as a single right hand exercise, but never before using a synchronized beat. But now we're going to add some harmony to this exercise as we bring in the left hand. Okay, first notice that the left hand is only half as busy as the right hand and will only play 1 note for every 2 beats. So in this situation, the left hand is the supporting hand to the right hand lead, which is often the case in many piano songs. But for now, let's just focus on the left hand part of this exercise, which you'll see is a much simpler group of notes to play. Alright, first let's get our left hand in our standard C hand position just below middle C and play these notes along with the beat. And 5, 4, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4, 3. Okay, I know what you're probably saying to yourself. Oh, come on, that was just too easy. And you're right. Compared to everything we've played so far, that was probably the easiest thing we've ever played. But as long as you played it correctly and in time with the beat, that's perfectly fine. But now the tricky part comes in, because now we have to play both of these lines together on the beat. And it's really just a matter of simple math. For every 2 notes we play in the right hand, we're going to play 1 note in the left hand. And this time I'm not going to count the notes out loud as I play, rather I'll be counting along with the beat so you can see how both hands should coordinate themselves as they play this exercise with the correct timing. So let's get both our hands back in their proper C hand positions on the keyboard and start playing both lines slowly and on the beat. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now if you find yourself having trouble getting both your hands to cooperate with each other, just take your time and slow this exercise down as much as you need to until your hand-to-hand coordination begins to improve naturally. If necessary, play this exercise only 1 short section at a time. Remember, I've split up the right-hand notes into groups of 2, accompanied of course by a single left-hand note. So you can just break this exercise up into these very short sections if you need to until you can play them all the way through to the end. But I definitely encourage you to keep practicing this assignment with both hands until you can play it all the way through without making any mistakes before you proceed on to your next piano exercise. Okay, let's try playing one more double-handed assignment where our right hand is playing the lead melody line. Once again, we've got two lines of numbers arranged horizontally, which will be played with both our hands together. The right hand numbers are indicated by the RH and are arranged in groups of 2. And the LH specifies our left hand and will play only one note for each set of 2 right hand notes. But first, we're going to begin only with our right hand in the middle C hand position and play each note written for the right hand along with our beat, which again is in the count of 2. Alright? So here goes. And 1, 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 2, 3, 5, 4, 2, 3, 1, 1. And as before, you probably notice how the graphic flies out to the right and flies back in from the left. Well, that's just to allow us to see the beginning and the end of the numbers, because our screen just isn't long enough to view the entire exercise all at once. So anyway, now let's focus on the supporting hand and bring in the left hand notes. Now, as you can probably tell by the way the left hand notes are situated, that they're meant to be played more spaced out and held a little longer than the right hand notes. In fact, each of our left hand notes gets 2 beats, whereas our right hand notes each received only 1 beat. So let's get our left hand and our proper C hand position on the keyboard, and let's focus on this string of numbers written for the left hand. And 3, 2, 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 3. Yeah, I know what you might be thinking. Pretty unimpressive, right? And sure, by itself it sounds like nothing. But just hold on a sec while we bring back the right hand lead again. And let's get both our hands in their proper C hand positions on the keyboard, and let's try that one again. Aha! Now that's more like it. Notice how our hands didn't even move an ounce, and we were still able to make some pretty sweet sounding harmonies. And this is just the beginning. Hey there! Welcome to the bonus exercises for Get Piano Lesson 7. This is the part of the DVD where you get to see additional materials that are not available online. But first, I want to thank you for your purchase of this DVD and for helping to make GetPianoLessons.com one of the best resources for online piano lessons. So now let's take a look at what we just learned in our first two-hand piano assignment and go a little deeper into it. Now, one thing you already know about me is that I believe the best way to learn a piano piece is to first play it forward. And then once you played it correctly, go ahead and play it backwards. So if we were to switch this two-handed exercise around so that each line of numbers was in reverse order, we get this. And the first thing you should notice is that the left-hand notes are now lined up to be played on the second beat. Keep in mind, we're still playing the left-hand notes for a length of 2 beats. However, this time we're not going to play the left-hand note until the second right-hand note is played within each short section. But of course, I'm going to start us out slowly with the right-hand part first. And remember, when we get to the end of this line, these numbers are going to fly out and be replaced with the end of the finger pattern. Alright? So let's get our right hand back in the middle C hand position and play along with our count of 2 beats. And 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, 2, 3, 1. 2, 2, 4, 5, 3. And once again, we're reminded of just how interesting it can sound whenever you switch any group of numbers around and play them in reverse order. Okay, so now let's bring in the notes for our left hand. And again, as I said, our left hand notes are lined up so that we should play them on the second beat. And it's easiest to see that when both sets of lines are displayed together like this. But just remember, when we're playing our left hand notes, each of them has a count of 2 beats. However, we're only going to strike them on the second beat. Alright, so let's get our left hand back in the C position on the keyboard and make sure that we play them on the correct beat. And with my right hand, I'm going to be pointing out the beat, just so that you have a visual reference of it. And 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 5. Okay, so now that we've figured out how to play our left hand notes on the second beat, let's bring back both hands to the keyboard and hear how harmonically different our first 2-hand exercise is going to sound now that we're going to play the whole thing backwards. And just remember, within each short section, we first begin by playing the right hand note, and then we play the left hand note together with the second right hand note. Now if that sounds a little confusing, just watch me do it first. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It's a little bit more tricky playing it this way, but it's just as pretty. But as always, if you're having trouble with the hand-to-hand coordination or with the timing of the left-hand notes, just take your time and slow this exercise down as much as you need to. You can even write the notes down off your screen and play this exercise in each individual section if you need to. And just to give you a brief example of how you might slow the exercise down and play them each individual section at a time, that might sound something like this. So, when you feel you've got the hang of this first bonus exercise, let's move on to our second bonus exercise for Get Piano Lesson 7. Okay, now we're going to take another look at our second two-handed piano assignment. And as you may know, this is one of the many fingering exercises I make freely available via the getpianolessons.com website. So you may have even seen this before in one of my online Blackboard assignments. But now let's put a little spin on this exercise as we reverse the sequence of numbers and play them backwards. Now once again, we can see that the left-hand notes are aligned in such a way to tell us to play them on the second beat, or in time with the second note of the right hand. And also, each left-hand note is played for a time value of 2 beats. So like before, let's first concentrate on the right-hand notes. And first we'll play everything we see here on the screen, and then when we run out of numbers to play, they'll simply shift out, and then the rest of our notes will shift back in again. Okay? So let's start out with our right hand in the middle C position and play along with the beat. And 3, 1, 1, 3, 2, 4, 5, 3, 2, 4, 5, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1. And of course, it's very easy to play this pattern of notes in time with the beat because each note receives a time value of 1 beat. Okay, so now let's focus on the notes for our left hand. And as I said just a short while ago, the left hand notes will receive a duration of 2 beats, but will strike each left hand note on the second beat. Okay, so let's get our left hand back in its proper C hand position on the keyboard and make sure we play each of them on the second beat. And 3, 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I know that doesn't sound like much by itself, but that's the interesting thing about harmony. You never know what it's really going to sound like until you play both the melody line and the supporting lines together. So let's do that. Let's bring back both sets of numbers and both hands back to the keyboard and hear how this assignment sounds when both hands are working in concert. And remember, within each short section, we're playing only one left-hand note for 2 right-hand notes. But we only strike that left-hand note on the count of 2. And you can watch me demonstrate what I mean like this. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And as always, you can slow this exercise down as much as necessary if you need to go at a slower pace. You can also try playing it section by section for just 2 beats at a time if you have difficulty playing it all the way through in the beginning. And I'll show you another example of how you can go ahead and do that. Alright, now that I've finally got you playing piano with both hands, I'm going to invite you to join me along a musical journey that will help you gradually improve and develop your own natural playing ability on the piano. And as you probably figured out by now, I'm going to focus very little on the topic of music theory at this point. Of course, I know there's a lot of strong opinions out there that consider this type of teaching a bit unorthodox, and I can definitely understand and appreciate that point of view, because normally the first thing we're taught when we learn how to play the piano is how to read music notation, along with a lot of other music terminology. In fact, some even consider the numbered fingering approach to learning the piano as kind of like a dead-end technique that could eventually get in the way or even become confusing when it comes time to actually read sheet music. Well, just keep in mind that when you're sight reading and playing actual music notations on a grand staff, there are 3 things you must account for in order to play those sheet music assignments correctly. Right, the first is obviously the name of the note and its relative location on your piano keyboard. The second is how long you're going to play that note for. For instance, how many beats or fractions of a beat are you going to play that note for. And the third is which fingers you're going to use and which hand position you're going to be in order to play those notes easily and correctly. And what the numbered fingering approach demonstrates is that third aspect of sight reading, how to implement the correct fingering regardless of the name of the note or worrying too much about its time value. And the real difference in learning the piano the way that I'm showing you is that it'll get you playing within seconds without having to memorize anything at first. And then later on, when we finally do get into learning music notation, it'll be 100% easier for you to conceptualize and apply it to the keyboard because you've already gained the mechanical aptitude that the average beginner student just doesn't have yet. And therefore, you won't have to struggle with your first few piano lessons like a lot of us had to do in the beginning, unfortunately. Now, the interesting thing to note is that some of the best piano players in history had never learned how to play even a single note of sheet music. So while I agree that learning music theory is a great way to broaden your overall understanding and appreciation of music, it doesn't necessarily translate into good keyboarding skills on the piano. Now, no amount of note reading is going to give you that kind of skill on the piano. It may be true that reading sheet music can aid you in your piano playing, but the only way to develop real skill on the keyboard is to get your hands on it and practice your fingering exercises. And that's exactly what the GetPianoLessons.com piano series is designed to get you doing right away. So, be sure to check me out next time in Get Piano Lesson 8, where we'll continue practicing our piano exercises with both hands and work on developing our hand-to-hand coordination. And this time, we're going to allow our left hand to take the lead and do most of the work. Take care.